Hey guys, so for this project, this is called the gradient project. Your objective is really simple. Because this week is going to focus on layers, I'm wanting y'all to just use and create just a couple layers to change the way the image looks, and just kind of make a nice little saying. So the two tools that we're going to be using this time is you're going to create some new layers, and we're going to use the gradient tool to have an effect on our image. So the first thing you want to do is find an image. It's getting to be fall sooner than we know, so I just decided to go with some fall leaves here. One thing about your images from here and to the rest of the class is if I go to image and image size, this image is a 1280 by 1024 image, which gives me a large enough image to work with, but still small enough to be manageable. Generally speaking, most of your assignments will be requiring you to use an image that's going to be at least 1000 by 800 pixels, preferably a little bigger. There's no reason to go gargantuan size with 5000 pixels by 2000 pixels. There are some projects later on this could be useful for, but for the most part, 1200, 1000, something like that on your pixel size will give you a pretty good sized image that you can work with. Try to stay away from any images that are smaller than 500 pixels, 700 pixels, something like that, because they'll break down really quick, and just won't have enough resolution there to use. So with that, let's go ahead and get started. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I want to create a new layer. Okay, and this new layer is just going to be your basic Photoshop layer, and the reason I want to create that layer is I don't want to change my background. I don't want to edit anything on my background here, because once that gets edited and I can't change it anymore, things will stay and it'll destroy stuff. If I am wanting to do something on my background layer, then the easiest way to work on this non-destructively is to right click and go to duplicate layer right here, and when I hit duplicate layer, hit OK on that, and it will allow me to have a second layer here just like my first one. And this one I can go and paint and scribble and do all sorts of crazy stuff on that I don't have to worry about. Why? Because all I have to do is turn it off and my squiggle marks are no longer there. Okay, delete this one. I can use the delete key or drag it down to the little trash can. Okay, so what I want to do is I'm going to use this layer 1, and this is where I'm going to kind of create my gradient. Now the gradient tool is this right here, which is usually buried under your paint bucket. So you have a 3D material drop, paint bucket, and gradient tool. Paint bucket's cool, is regular and used for basic color fill. Okay, like that. And the gradient tool works a little bit differently, where you have a selection of gradients, and when you pull them across, they create patterns. Okay, and you can change these, edit these. This one's kind of a nifty because it creates that kind of like sky plane sort of effect. And you can use any of these gradients for your image. So for me, what I'm going to do is I'm going to delete this layer, create me a new one, go to my gradient tool, and I'm going to use this first one here, okay, which is this kind of alpha fade, because you can see the checkerboard behind it, and what that means is it's going to have transparency on it. And so when I take my cursor and drag it across, and see, I can wiggle this and it changes the angle of the line. If I hold down the shift key, it'll draw a straight line. So I'm going to drag it across my image, and when I release, it's going to create a fade. Okay, a fade from right across the image. And if I keep repeating it, it'll get darker and darker as I go across. Okay, go to my history. I can undo a few of these, kind of back it up, back it down a little bit, and depending on where I place it at the start and finish it at the end, either gives me a tight fade or a much more gradual fade. So what I'm going to do is just add a little more fade to it, something, yeah, sort of like that. Maybe add another little brief layer to it, pull it across. Okay, there we go. So I'm getting a good fade. In this case, half my image is kind of blacked out. But if I want to adjust this, what I can do is grab the move tool and I can move this layer away. And so I'm moving the layer on top of the other layer so I can kind of align it better. So once I kind of have the fade I'm looking for, I can move it and fade it away. Now the other neat thing about layers is that you don't have to have just the normal, and you don't have to have just the 100% fill opacity. So I can drag this down and I can fade in and control the darkness this way. Okay, and then I can also come in here and change the blend, whether I want to darken or multiply or overlay or hard light, soft light. I can have it as to lighten the image or subtract from it, do a difference or exclusion. All these different things affect the way the upper layer will affect the bottom layer. The opacity in the fill will control how it affects and how much of an effect it has on the underlying layer. So in this case, I was really liking the way the overlay looked. So it actually has created almost a red leaf effect on these leaves across the road. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a little bit of an overlay to that, and then I can use this move tool and move the layer back. If I want much more precise control, I can use my arrow keys or shift arrow keys, and it'll also slide the layer. So I can have a little bit of red, or I can bring it in and have a lot more red leaves. So maybe something like that looks kind of interesting. Next, what I'm going to do is I'm going to duplicate this layer, and that kind of more intensifies the effect. But I'm going to change this mode here from overlay to multiply, and that's going to give me more of a darker screen effect. So I'm actually going to darken the image. I don't want to take it completely away, but let's change that to something about, say, 90%. There we go. Give us kind of a nice shadow, and then I can adjust this layer here, and so I can bring in the dark, make it darker, or I can fade it in and make it lighter, depending. Okay. So maybe I'll do something like this, and then I'll bring this layer over a little bit more like that. And so now I have these layers built up that are changing the way my image looks. So the next thing I want to do to complete this project is to add some text. So if I hit the T button over here for text and click on the image, it's going to automatically create another layer. This is going to be called a text layer, and in this text layer, just like before, we can type in what we want. So in this case, the winds are a-changing, something kind of like leaves in the wind, or kind of a more folly statement. In this case, my text is actually buried underneath this other shadow layer. So what will happen with this is it will actually get darker if I change it to a different color since it's in the shadow. So what we want to do is rearrange this by breaking this up. So this is part of my layer stack, and you can move these and it'll control the way different things will have effects depending on where they are in the stack. So in this case, what I want to do is go back to my text tool and click on my text. I'm going to highlight this, and let's change the font. Papyrus. There we go. That's a good one. We can change the size. Change if we want it bold, sharp, crisp. You can change the rest of it. So something like that looks kind of cool, looking very fine. So let's do a Control T to transform it. I'm just going to bring this, change the scale of it a little bit, something like that. And then let's take hit enter. Let's go back to our text. Let's fit this more onto the side here. I'll line that up real nice. Alright, now let's see if we can make this pop. So the last thing I'm going to do is hit the text key. Let's change this color. And let's do kind of a neater purple. And then I'm going to go to the blending options, which is something else you can do with all layers. You can go to your blending options, and it brings up all these kind of wonderful special effects. And I'm going to do a outer glow. And change the controls on this so it kind of comes out. And you can feel free to play with all these different effects. So that's like a pattern overlay, or have its own gradient overlay, different colors, even do a stroke around the border. So in this case, I could do an outside. It's going to give it kind of a bold. There we go, something like that. So you can just dial your changes in. Kind of reposition that just a little bit. And there we go. Alright, so three layers here. I have two different blending layers, one for the shadow, one for the kind of the color change. I have my background and a text layer. So that's all I need to complete this assignment. So all I need to do now is save it and upload. Thank you.